Welcome to Biopractice webinar on executive update of the US-Europe status and opportunity of the new biosimilar product class. The presenter for today's webinar is Dr. Haas Daulat, Principal Consultant at Pharma Bio Consulting. Now, I would like to hand over to the presenter, Dr. Haas Daulat. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Biopractice, for this kind invitation. Without further ado, I want to proceed with updating you on biosimilars development in Europe and the States. The EU continues from strength to strength in its 9 year of approvals from 2006 onwards. And there are now 4 drugs under review: etanercept, infliximab, enoxaparin, and recombinant human insulin. The EU experience has been very influential worldwide, and even now WHO is revising its guideline from 2010 because it lags behind by about 2 or 3 years with the European developments, and it was actually based on European experience right from the beginning. I've mentioned this a number of times, and now actually the WHO are very active in consulting many different authorities and different interest groups in this next important step. The EMA development is moving forward very fast, and the monoclonal class has been opened up, as you know, with the approval of infliximab over a year ago, and that was by Celltrion, a rather modest company, not traditional pharma at all. It was a CMO, very unusual kind of scenario. And now moving very strongly into new classes. The FDA has progressed very nicely, and I would say playing catch up, and maybe, I imagine in the next few years taking a leadership role internationally. So they have the FDA Purple Book, which defines interchangeability and also lists the reference drugs. Then we have the approval of filgrastim, G-CSF Cesio, so very important. And there are several drugs under review. So that is the Remsima, the infliximab of Celltrion or Hospira, their partner company, the licensee, Retacrit, and also there is Glargine was approved. So that was the first insulin, and not approved under the biosimilar pathway, the ANDA, but NDA B2 pathway. So it's not a 351K. Now I will actually discuss the Zarzio scenario shortly because it's very important precedent. But on the next slide, many of you are familiar with the fact that we are dealing with, in the States, with the BPCI Act. It's actually 2 acts in combination. I like the American definition of biosimilarity. The issue is similar, but notwithstanding minor differences in clinically inactive components, and no clinically meaningful differences in terms of safety, purity, and potency. It's not saying risk-benefit and efficacy and safety, because that's the classical legal framework for approval in the States under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. So here, these candidates for biosimilars were approved under the Public Health Services Act. So it's a different basis of approval: safety, purity, and potency. And you will recall that the FDA had to also redefine what we mean by a biologic. and to open up this new pathway. Now, the American biosimilar, like we have the Zarzir approval, is just like the European in terms of the background to approval and what you can do with the biosimilar subsequently. It's essentially a non-interchangeable. In other words, you can't substitute at the pharmacy level. So just as in Europe, the decision is, the approval is at the European level, but the decision is at the national or regional level with regard to